Hello! Today we're diving into WorldwideChat, a powerful plugin designed to both eliminate language barriers and enhance communication in real time. So this plugin is powered by multiple different translation APIs that you can pick from. We currently support Paper, Spigot, and even Folia on Minecraft versions 1.13 and up. Currently, these are all the translation services we support. Let's take a look here. We support Amazon Translate, Azure Translate, ChatGPT, DeepL Translate, Google Translate, Libre Translate, Ollama, and Systran Translate. So each of their upsides and downsides are documented on our wiki. Notably, as of 1.19.0, we support large language models such as ChatGPT and Ollama for the people who'd like to self-host, alongside more traditional translation services like Google Translate or DeepL Translate. So with that in mind, I want to take a look at just how easy it is to use this plugin. The command you and your players are going to be using the most often is /translate. When you type the command, you'll be greeted with a simple GUI that has two buttons, but the button we're going to focus on is this compass. This compass will help you start a translation session. Essentially, the first thing you need to start a translation session is a source language. This changes depending on which translation service you're using. These are all the supported languages according to Amazon Translate. Additionally, a lot of our translation services support auto-detection, meaning if you don't know what language your input's going to be, you can just press on a bookshelf right here. But because Amazon Translate doesn't support that, we're just going to pick a source language. So let's go with English. And now, this is always required, we need an output language. In this case, I'd like it to be Spanish. Right away, we get notified by WorldwideChat that the translation session has started. And if we say something in chat, hello there, how are you? You'll notice it gets translated right away. Additionally, if you'd like to translate someone else, open the translate menu for someone else, you can just type /translate and then their name. So in this case, it's my own name, but if there's another player on the server, you can do that as well. Additionally, we don't just support per player translations. We also support global translation. This can be useful if you just want to get everyone on the same page on your server. This can be opened up by typing /gtranslate, just adding a G there. Similar looking UI, you just click on the compass again, you get an input language, let's do English. And for this output language, let's put Hebrew, since its appearance is noticeably different compared to Spanish. Now let's try chatting again. You're going to notice something. Even though we just requested all of our chat to be translated from English to Hebrew, this is still being translated to Spanish. This is because individual player translation sessions automatically override global translation sessions. So if we stop our local translation session by just clicking on this red barrier right here, and we try chatting again, you'll notice it's now in Hebrew because of our global translation session, which can also be stopped via the same way. So now that I've shown you how to enable translation sessions for both yourself, other players, or even globally, now let's take a look at some of those options that we saw when we started a new translation session. So I'm going to restart this one right here. Let's go from English to Hebrew. So we have a number of options to pick from, but the one I want to focus on first is the chat translation menu. So by default, I just want to demo this behavior quickly again. When you say something, and you've just started a translation session, your outgoing messages will be translated. This means that other players see this as well, not just you. However, there is another option. So besides translating outgoing messages, which is the default behavior, you can also translate incoming messages, meaning that if somebody says something to you in English, you'll see it in Hebrew. You'll see it in Hebrew on your end. Nobody else will see it in Hebrew. This can be done very easily. So if you type /translate and you click on this little painting right here, there are two options to pick from. We have the toggle outgoing chat translation option, which is enabled by default, And we have the toggle incoming chat translation, which achieves the behavior I just described. Let's click on that. And now let's disable toggle outgoing chat translation. You can have both enabled, but I would usually recommend having one or the other enabled. Now that that's done, let's try saying something in English again. You'll notice that it's not actually being translated. This is because we disabled outgoing chat translation. However, now let's go to player 2, and let me show you kind of what we're doing here. So, this player does not have a translation session. If they say something in English, let me say, will this be translated? You'll notice that while on their end all looks normal and all is well, their message is outputted in English, it looks normal. For this player and this player only, the message gets changed. We see that this message in English has been translated to Hebrew, and if you hover over this message, it shows the original one in English. So that's incoming chat translation. You can switch between either one or whichever one feels best for you. Now that we've covered how WorldwideChat supports seamless chat translation, let's take a look at the 4 ways you can actually translate various components of Minecraft. So if we look at /translate again, besides the chat translation menu, we actually have 4 other options we can enable or disable, depending on what we want. We have toggle item translation, toggle sign translation, toggle entity translation, and toggle book translation. They all do exactly what they say on the tin. But for this part, I'm going to focus on toggle sign translation. All you have to do to enable it is click on it. You'll know any of these are enabled generally when their label color is green and they have a little glow effect, a little enchanted glow effect. We also get a little chat notification as well. With that in mind, let's see here. Let's go to some of our sample signs and check it out. So this is on the test server that we run. The IP is in the description. But all you have to do to translate a sign is right-click on it. Let's do that now. As you can see, because the translation of the sign was small enough to fit on the sign itself was actually changed to reflect the translation. Keep in mind, the sign itself doesn't actually get modified. This is purely a client-side modification. This means that if any other player is around you, they won't see what you just did. Only you can see this. Additionally, if you reload the chunk or just log in and out of the server, like we can do now, you'll notice that the sign changes right back because it was never actually changed in the first place. So for translations that fit in the sign, that's the default behavior. However, there's an interesting kind of, case that happens when the translation is longer than the limits of a Minecraft sign, because essentially on each of these lines, I believe the character limit is 15 or 16 or so characters in Minecraft. So if we exceed that, all we do, let's right-click on this sign now, all we do is we simply send the entire sign in chat to the player. And that's sign translation. So now let's take a look at the next type we support, which is item translation. Let's turn off toggle sign translation. Let's turn on toggle item translation. So, once item translate is enabled, what this means is that any item with either a custom name, custom lore, or both will automatically be translated for you. However, just to start, if we try to translate an item that just has the default name, no actual changes, we'll get rejected right away because there simply isn't really a point of doing this. If you really want to if you want to find the very accurate translation of the default items in Minecraft, you can just change your language settings right here. However, if it has a custom name, or custom lore, of course, all you have to do is hold it in your primary hand and right-click. You'll get this little item display GUI, and in the middle, you'll see your item, but whatever can be translated is translated. So that's all there is to item translation. And keep in mind, you cannot actually modify this inventory. It's purely read-only. And that's item translation. Up next, we have 2 more, I believe. Yes, let's take a look at entity translation. Let's turn that on. I believe we have some entities over here. Let's take a look. So same kind of rules go here as well. If entity translation is enabled, you just have to right-click on an entity with a custom name to translate them. Let's try this entity though, this cow. It does not have a custom name, and if we try and right-click on it, you'll notice that we get told just that, because again, there's no point of translating something that doesn't actually have a name. However, if we name, I want to find a pig because this is, yeah, that'd be kind of odd. Oh, so this pig already has a custom name. If we right-click on this pig, you'll notice that we get the translated name in chat. And that was entity translation. The last way to translate Minecraft that's supported by this plugin currently is toggle book translation. So let's turn off entity translation. Let's enable it just by clicking on this little book and quill icon. So once that's enabled, all you have to do is right-click on a signed book, and you'll notice right away that every page in the book is automatically translated. Additionally, the book title is sent to chat as well. And that's all there is to book translation. Keep in mind, if for whatever reason there is no title, there is no content, then obviously this won't work. But those are the 4 ways you can translate Minecraft and the 4 things that your players will be using most often. Now in this next section, I'm going to be primarily covering some of the ways that administrators can easily manage and just use this plugin in general. Now, just a second, there's actually one last option I forgot to cover, and that is the ability to change your localization. So this plugin the default language for this plugin can be changed globally by administrators. However, not every player on your server might prefer or even speak that language that you've set this plugin to. So if you'd like, this button right here, I'll reset it back to English, set localization, is always enabled whether they have an active translation session or not. So all you have to do is type /translate, and it's here. You click on that, and then you just click on the language you prefer. Very similar UI to the compass, but I'm going to click on Spanish. And right away, the entire plugin gets translated into Spanish. Pretty useful. However, a couple extra, features of this. If your player joins your server for the first time, what happens is WorldwideChat attempts to detect their Minecraft language and will adjust itself accordingly. This can be disabled, but additionally, if they're connected to your server and they change their language, let's go from English to, we're going to change this to Spanish. As you can see, because we changed our language to Spanish, WorldwideChat tells us that it's detected a language change, and if we look, our actual localization is Spanish. If we change it back to English, let's see here. Where's the United States? There it is. WorldwideChat reflects that change as well. Pretty useful to have, especially if you're just switching between multiple languages for whatever reason that may be. So that is the last, user-facing button that your users are going to be interacting with most often. Now the options I'm going to cover are primarily administrator focused and just help you better use and effectively moderate this plugin. So if we go back to /translate, let's start up a new translation session. We covered all of these ways to, make the plugin easier to use for your players. However, one button that your players normally can't see unless they have an explicit permission to do so is the ability to set rate limits on other players, or even yourself if you'd like. So by default, the server has a global rate limit you can set, because you might just want everyone to be capped, let's say 1 translation per 30 seconds. However, one player or one group of players might be using your translation services a bit too much or a bit too little. Maybe you want to make the rate limits less, maybe you want to make it more. With that in mind, you just click on Set Rate Limit, and it tells you that the rate limit per translation is currently 0 seconds. All we have to do to set a new rate limit for this player, which in this case is me, is we just respond with a number. In this case, I'm going to go with something a bit high. Let's go with 45. Right away, you'll notice that this block starts glowing, the slime block, and it tells us exactly what this player's rate limit is. Let's test that now. So if I say hello there, the translation goes off without a hitch. However, because it hasn't been 45 seconds, if I say, will this translate? We get rate limited. Again, this is timed and will expire after the window you set. And those are pretty much all of the options we currently have available to administrators and players in /translate. Now I'd like to show a couple additional commands that can be helpful for administrators especially. The first one is /wwcs. This one actually is interesting because it lets you get the stats of both online and offline players. So if I type my name right now, I'll get a number of things. I'll get whether they're an active translator or not, whether the number of translations they've attempted, the number of translations they've succeeded in making, and their last successful translation time. Oh, and their localization to top it all off. So if they have an active translation session, let's check back here, we get all of this lovely information right here. This can be useful just if you're trying to monitor, user usage, or you just need some general telemetry data. So if the player is offline as well, you can get their information. So if I type yes, I believe this might work. Yeah, so this player in proper biker 628 is offline. However, you can still get their stats. And all of this is reported right here. If they're not a valid player, you'll get told that right away. The last feature of WorldwideChat that we're going to be covering is /wwcc. This is so a lot of administrators, as one myself in the past, we often don't like having to go into our plugins directory and have to deal with the usually multiple YAML files that plugins, including this one, come with. While it is still definitely a route you can take, we actually provide all of our configuration in this easy-to-use GUI. There's a lot of options to go through here, and while I would love to go through them all in this video, truthfully, it would add probably an extra 20 minutes minimum runtime to this video. Remember, all of these are documented extensively in our wiki, but I guess I'll just go through some highlights real quick. So here's where you can toggle any general information, such as the plugin prefix, or when we save all our user data, things like that. Up next is the storage configuration. By default, we store our files as YAML files on the local file system. However, if you have a database set up, you can use Postgres, MongoDB, or MySQL. Up next, we have numerous chat configuration options, including enabling Vault support, enabling our blacklist, which just scans requested translations for bad words, and if they contain those bad words, they get blocked. You can also override our plugin messages here. So if you don't like, let's say, the way we tell a user when a new update is available, you can change that right here very easily. Up next is the translator configuration. We covered this in the beginning of the video, but this is where you can enable and configure all of the translators. You'll see here you can click on this to enable or disable. It's pretty straightforward. Here's where you can also configure our cache. So by default, up to 100 successful translations are cached inside of this plugin, meaning essentially if you say hello, and you say, oh, let's try a different one, new translation. Oh, let me start one. If I say new translation and I say it again, you'll notice the second translation was a lot quicker than the first. That's because the result of the first translation was cached. So going back to /wwcc, this is where you can configure its size as well as whether it persists after reloads. And lastly is the AI configuration. So because of the way that large language models work, our default prompt for both should be more than sufficient. However, if you'd like to get some additional behavior that we haven't specified out of Ollama or ChatGPT, you can do that here. You can also change the languages they support, since normally traditional language services tell you which languages they support, but because, quite frankly, ChatGPT or Olama or Meta, none of them really know how many concrete languages their models support, as well as how well. We're just using the official list of supported languages from OpenAI here. You can configure this to your liking, though, as you see fit. And that is all of the features available, the most important features available in WorldwideChat. Again, you can find all of this and more in the wiki. But overall, having a globally accessible server is no longer a pipe dream, but a reality with this plugin. Thanks for watching and have a great day.